What's the biggest problem with our educational system and how do you solve it?
Short answer is like the educational system is geared for like the assembly line, past. It's like the Bismarckian education system to make people conform, and it's one size fits all, and it is bullying, and it's also really ideological indoctrination rather than education. Kids don't learn basic skills like reading a bus schedule or like filing forms for the government. All those things they have to pick up on their own. They don't learn about interest. They don't learn about, basic stats. They don't learn, a lot of practical skills. They don't earn a single dollar for many years. So, there's that saying like, America produces, this is what they used to say, and I don't think it's even true anymore. America produces the most impractical 21-year-olds in the world, the most competent 30-year-olds, because they get out of the educational system and they don't know anything and all their concepts are wrong. And then they're getting, they get corrected by the market and they've got a good head on their shoulders by 30, right? Um, So I think the answer is actually just totally root and branch, reimagining what it is, right? And so, short answer is you're continuously learning. You're learning from an early age. The learning is interspersed with earning. You gain crypto credentials on chain for every act so that you're constantly building your portfolio as you are learning things and earning. Just like you might put on your CV, I did this deal for X dollars. I, shipped that product for Y dollars. That's actually a real time thing where you ask somebody for an on chain endorsement. So you can like book that. It's like a micro endorsement, right? And then the accumulation of that, that's like your resume. In the same way, like if a teacher is teaching a class and you get a question right, you book that as, okay, I got that question right, right? So this concept of like crypto credentials, crypto endorsements. So you've got this crypto resume that is this spinal column, just like tweets. So you've got a few of these accomplishments every day, but you're building a portfolio. That portfolio is portable across places. And now you solve for several things, right? First, you're not going into debt, right? Second, you're learning useful skills. Third, if you're looking at the earning of other people with the crypto credential of, let's say, JavaScript, right? You can say, oh, I need to learn that because the price of that is very high. I can see that on chain. Just like coin market cap, you could have skill market cap. You look at which crypto credentials are associated with the highest on-chain compensation, and then you start learning in the direction. You do gradient ascent rather than figuring it out for yourself afterwards. You're seeing a signal, right? So, you're continuously learning. You're not going into debt. You're learning useful skills. Um, and you're refreshing constantly. You have mnemonic media or something like that, where you're treating it as software that you're not just loading into your brain one time at age 21 and then for the rest of your life, but rather as an ongoing maintenance thing. If you think about how silly it is, by the way, that the concept is that you spend K through 12 and then 4 more years in school, and then everything else is learning on the job, right? That's like buying this really expensive car that you have zero maintenance budget for. You have no budget for oil. You have no budget for tire checks, right? You bought this expensive piece of capital equipment. You have no maintenance budget for it. And then what happens is it's broken down by like age 30 or whatever. And you're like, that expensive college education. Do I remember how to do integration by parts? Do you remember Bessel functions? I mean, I remember it because I just like to do math, but most people don't because they're not using it, which I understand. It's like literally a creaking, rusty thing in their head. They use that. I'm rusty on this. That's why that analogy is very good. It's like rusting capital equipment they just bought early on. Then another thing you do is you'd spread the vacation out over your life rather than have this thing where like the vacation, but people don't appreciate what a vacation is. They have a vacation through college. College is amazing because like, or it was, I'm not sure what it is today. I think you're being yelled at a lot to a greater extent. Okay. But college is like this amazing vacation that the young don't appreciate because they haven't worked yet, you know? And oh my God, all I have to do is like relax and learn. And I can do that in the sun and I just have to do some homework problems. Oh my God, that's the most amazing thing. People don't appreciate that until after they've actually done, work for somebody else or built something. Um, so to summarize, and then finally decentralized. So rather than effectively, it's funny, supposedly state controlled media is like really bad. Okay. But we have a state controlled education system, right? We have a certainly totally state controlled K through 12. We have state controlled um, academia in large part, not just, you know, state universities, but government funding for academia. So like academia and education, K through 12 are controlled by the government, but state media is really bad. So if you do believe that state control is bad, why? Because I find very few people can give a clean articulation of why state media is bad, but state education is good beyond the mere Russell conjugation of it. Do you know what I mean by Russell conjugation? It's
Nope.
like, you know, uh, I dox, you leak, but the New York Times investigates.
Right.
Okay. I sweat, you perspire, but she glows. Okay. So same thing. It's also called if by whiskey. It's like the same thing can be clad in a different, kind of tonal thing, right? So beyond Russell conjugating it, you can't usually give a good explanation of why state media is um, is bad, but state education is good. And if you think they're both bad, then you want to decentralize it so it's all individualized and it's customized to the individual. So that's the summary. Is you, it's a little bit cliche to say it, but you want network native, internet native education that prepares people for working on the internet, which means they're working very early on. Oh, one other aspect of this, by the way, um, it used to be that uh, families in the 1800s would have large families and they'd all work on the farm. And that 6-year-old would like work on the farm and would be productive very early on. And there wasn't like this extended adolescence period and so on. They were plucking, the chickens or whatever, and they're earning their keep. You had more children because like they were cash flow positive basically. They like you needed the labor. It's your labor force, right? But you didn't work them too hard because they're your kids and you love them, right? So there's like, an equity interest in a sense in them. This all changed when, like factories arose, and in the era of child labor, those factory owners, some of them were unscrupulous and would work the poor kids really hard, and those kids would not have, libertarian theory breaks down when it's children, right? Those children don't have the ability to speak up or the frame or something like that. So reasonably, all these child labor laws were passed that essentially began this long campaign of infantilization. And now it's something where you're like on your parents' health insurance till age 27 or something crazy like that, right? And so that whole thing kind of began on a reasonable basis and has got into a ludicrous basis. There's people who are being educated as a doctor till age 30 or something, and before they start seeing a patient. It just doesn't really, intuitively make sense that you're going to need that much education to do that, right? And you might be able to install the software faster, basically. And now what's happening today, relating it to today, is lots of kids are able to make money at home. Okay. So the quote child labor issue where somebody's in a factory and they're being oppressed by a boss and the parent can't see them and they're like their little fingers are being worked off. All that goes away when they're at home and you're able to supervise them. And basically the same, buttons they would press to play a video game, they're pressing to work on Replit or to build Web3 stuff. And they can work pseudonymously and you can supervise them and you can see that they're not getting up to extreme mischief, and that they're earning responsibly, and now they can actually start doing real things much sooner and apprenticing much sooner. And, like the internet, like obviously there's unsafe things on the internet, but physical harm is less probable, right? If they're supervised. And so a lot of things come back to the future where now kids could work from an earlier age. And there's much more of occupation and remuneration rather than simply quote education.
How